Hello, today we will recap a drama movie, in which a young and clever nun hugs everyone in the church, and becomes supreme nun. Before we start, please subscribe to our channel for more such amazing recaps. Spoilers ahead, chill out and enjoy. The film begins with the Carlini family traveling to Pescia. They come to a halt in their carriage ride, so that their daughter Benedetta can pray before a statue of the Virgin Mary. Benedetta's song to the statue is cut short, when some bandits arrive to rob them of their valuable possessions. They explain to the robbers that they are only going to Pescia, to enroll their young daughter in a convent. The thieves then steal a necklace from Benedetta's mother. Benedetta demands that the bandit leader return her mother's necklace. She believes the Virgin Mother will protect her and listens to her. The bandits begin to mock her, but the birds begin to chirp, and one of them poops in the bandit leader's eye. The bandit leader, taken aback by Benedetta's actions, returns the necklace and leaves the family. The nobles then arrive in Pescia, leaving Benedetta to join the convent. Her father promises yearly gifts, in exchange for Benedetta receiving the necessary training to become Jesus' wife, during a meeting with Sister Felicita. Felicita, however, is unhappy with the offer and requests additional funds from Benedetta's father. With money in her pocket, Felicita takes Benedetta in. As Benedetta puts on her new nun robes, one of the nuns gives Benedetta a lecture, about how it's better to be uneasy about your body. She takes away the young girl's wooden statue and places it in a cabinet. Sister Jacob then shows her wooden finger, and tells her how much she enjoys having wood on her body. Benedetta is then led to her room, where we see her trying to sleep. Benedetta wakes up later that night, and goes to pray in front of the Virgin statue. As she prays, it falls and nearly crushes Benedetta. Rather than screaming for her life, the young girl chooses to suck on the exposed wooden melons of the Virgin statue. Benedetta is now a stunning young woman, 18 years later. She plays the Virgin Mary in a play. While performing in a play, she has a vision of Jesus. When Benedetta meets Jesus, he invites her to become his wife. She snaps out of it after another nun wakes her up. Benedetta's mother then asks why she was moving her feet, to which Benedetta responds that she was having a vision of Jesus. Benedetta's parents are preparing to leave the convent. A young woman, Bartolomea, bursts through the gates. She begs Benedetta's support while kneeling before her. Soon after, a man enters and attempts to drag her from the monastery. Then Giuliano and Felicita step in to stop the fight. While Bartolomea seeks Felicita's support, the man introduces himself as her father. Felicita declines Bartolomea's request to stay in the monastery, because she appears poor. The girl is permitted after Benedetta offers to pay the dowry. Giuliano eventually pays for Bartolomea's accommodation, claiming it as a gift for Benedetta. Benedetta helps Bartolomea clean up that night, and accidentally touches her melon. When they go to the bathroom later, Benedetta discovers that Bartolomea relieves herself with their cattle in the streets. She also finds out about Bartolomeo's injuries. And Bartolomea claims that her father and brother hug her every day and night. That's why she ran into the monastery. Benedetta compliments her on her beauty. The girls look into each other's eyes and almost kiss, but are stopped by another nun. Bartolomea kisses Benedetta goodbye before leaving for bed, and Benedetta prays to Mary before going to bed, expressing doubt about her ability to guide Bartolomea. The next day at choir practice, Bartolomea slides her fingers into Benedetta's sweet spot. Benedetta has a vision as a result of this. Benedetta imagines herself alone in the church, surrounded by snakes. When she begs Jesus to save her, he appears to slay the snakes. He kisses Benedetta and asks her to marry him. Benedetta regains consciousness soon after, and notices that everyone in choir practice is staring at her. She returns to her spot quietly, as if nothing had happened. A few days later, Bartolomea has an accident with another nun. Benedetta punishes her by forcing her to retrieve thread spools from a cauldron of boiling water. After learning about the incident, Felicita punishes Benedetta by depriving her of food for a week, and forcing her to care for Sister Jacob. Jacob informs her that they bring her closer to God. Benedetta, who is envious, later examines her melons with a shiny plate to see if they are also wounded. That evening, Benedetta experiences pain and a panic attack. Felicita calls the doctor after securing her to the bed. Because he can't figure out what's wrong with Benedetta, the doctor decides to sedate her whenever she has a panic attack. Before going to bed, Bartolomea confesses her feelings for Benedetta and kisses her. Benedetta then has another vision. This time, she is kidnapped by bandits who try to take advantage of her. She screams for Jesus to come and save her, and he does. Benedetta, on the other hand, discovers that the man who saved him is not Jesus. And he slices her melon. She awakens with a panic attack, and the nuns sedate her. Felicita later tells Benedetta that Bartolomea will be her roommate and that she will look after her. While organizing the cabinet, Bartolomea discovers Benedetta's old clothes and wooden statue. Bartolomea places it on a nearby table, because it is important to her friend. Later in the night, Benedetta has another vision. This time, she encounters Jesus on the cross, and he orders her to strip naked. He also tells her to touch him, which causes severe pain in Benedetta. Hearing Benedetta's screams, Bartolomea awakens. She notices that she is naked on the floor and that her hands are bleeding. The next morning, Benedetta shows the nuns her wounds and claims Jesus is the one who caused them. The nuns conclude that it is the stigmata, because the wounds resemble those received by Jesus during his crucifixion. Felicita questions Benedetta about her injuries. She eventually calls Secchi to inquire about Benedetta. Felicita believes it isn't the stigmata, because there are no wounds on the forehead, where Jesus wore the crown of thorns. Secchi warns her not to jump to conclusions. Benedetta and Bartolomea leave the room, but she stops by the Virgin statue to pray. Their conversation abruptly stops when they hear Benedetta yelling in pain outside. When they go outside to investigate, they discover her on the ground with a wound on her forehead. She then speaks in a man's voice, and proclaims a prophecy about the upcoming plague. Cristina looks around the hall and notices broken glass on the floor. She informs Felicita that Benedetta is lying. The news of Benedetta's miracle and sainthood spread like wildfire. Cristina tells Felicita about Benedetta's lies while this is going on. Felicita informs Cristina that they have no choice but to accept the situation, because she is unable to provide evidence to back up her claims. Benedetta wakes Bartolomea later that night, and tells her that Jesus gave her his heart. She instructs Bartolomea to touch it, so she can measure its size. The following day, Secchi holds a ceremony to celebrate Benedetta's elevation to sainthood. Secchi asks Felicita to hand over her position to Benedetta, and she agrees politely. Cristina attempts to object to the choice, but Felicita quickly silences her. Later that day, Felicita gives Benedetta her room. Felicita opens a hole in the wall to the other room before leaving. When Benedetta and Bartolomea arrive a short time later, they are pleased with their new accommodation. Later, Cristina approaches Ricordati and asks him to listen to her confession. Cristina admits that she witnessed Benedetta faking her stigmata. Later that evening, Bartolomea and Benedetta are flooded with emotion. They hug, but Benedetta is unhappy with Bartolomea's short fingers. The next day, Ricordati requests that Cristina make her allegations against Benedetta in front of everyone during the meal. Felicita is asked to confirm her disclosure by Ricordati, but she denies her daughter's claims. Finally, Benedetta makes Cristina whip herself in front of everyone. Bartolomea transforms Benedetta's wooden statue into a pleasure rod one night, and invites her to try it. Felicita sees the two women as they play with the wooden toy. After finishing her game, Bartolomea notices a bright red light coming from the window. Everyone goes outside to look at the red comet in the sky. They notice Cristina on top of the church a few moments later. Felicita is unable to prevent her daughter from killing herself despite her best efforts. Benedetta does not bless Cristina's soul because of Felicita. When Benedetta persists, Felicita attacks her. Later that evening, Felicita leaves the monastery to travel to Florence. Benedetta tries to relax by hugging Bartolomea, who is upset by Felicita's behavior. Unfortunately, Bartolomea is not in the mood, because she is concerned about what might happen next. Benedetta eventually decides to do it herself. Felicita eventually arrives in Florence, a plague city. She runs into head priest Alfonso and tells him about Benedetta's lies. Later that evening, a procession was held in Pescia. Benedetta approaches one of the city guards slowly. She orders him to lock the city gates, and prevent anyone from entering or leaving the city. Felicita and Alfonso arrive in Pescia a few days later, to find it under lockdown. Alfonso, who has authority in the church, forces Secchi to let them into the city. The next day, Alfonso holds a trial to expose Benedetta's lies. Felicita, who is present as a witness, describes to everyone the wooden toy that Benedetta and Bartolomea played with. Alfonso inquires about Bartolomea's relationship with Benedetta, but she denies it. Alfonso tortures Bartolomea in order to loosen her lips. Bartolomea betrays Benedetta, because she can't take the pain of the metal sweet spot spreader any longer. Soon after, Alfonso learns that Felicita has contracted the plague. He directs his servant to isolate the woman, and burn everything she comes into contact with. In the meantime, the nuns expel Bartolomea from the monastery. Before fleeing, Bartolomea steals some clothing outside. Later that evening, Benedetta pays a visit to Felicita, who is ill. They talk about Christina's soul being in hell. Benedetta eventually whispers something into Felicita's ears. The next day, the guards bring Benedetta to the town square. As she passes by, Bartolomea calls her name and begs forgiveness for betraying her. Before the execution, Alfonso gives Benedetta one last chance to confess her lies. Benedetta believes Pescia will die of the plague, rather than admitting her lies. With the help of Felicita, she successfully pins the blame on Alfonso. As the guards bring Benedetta to the stake, the crowd begins to riot. As the executioner lights the stake, chaos breaks out, and people fight the guards to free Benedetta. Alfonso, terrified for his life, tries to flee but is apprehended. The people rip him apart after one final encounter with Benedetta, and he dies. As they leave, Benedetta and Bartolomea watch Felicita jump into the blazing stake. Then we see Benedetta and Bartolomea in an abandoned home, wearing their birthday attire. Bartolomea tries to stop Benedetta from returning to Pescia. Despite her best efforts, Bartolomea is unable to convince her lover to stay. Benedetta departs for Pescia, not looking back at the angry Bartolomea. Benedetta's attempt to influence the church fails, and she is eventually imprisoned for her lies. So this was the story of the film Benedetta, released in 2021. If you like the story, then do watch the full film, and if you want to watch more such amazing recaps, then do subscribe to our channel. See you in the next recap.